William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Everybody take your seats. Boy, do we have a great turnout today. Good morning and welcome everybody to Communities Foundation of Texas. My name is Dave Scullin. I'm the very proud president and CEO of this wonderful organization. And on behalf of all of our colleagues who work here at CFT, we want to thank you and so appreciate that you are here with us tomorrow for this important event. And we want to thank our host, MDHA, for holding this morning's Mayoral Forum on Homelessness here at Communities Foundation of Texas. And we're so pleased by the turnout. My gosh, it's a fantastic turnout. And hopefully this bodes well for strengthening the level of our community engagement in electing the next great mayor of a very great city. That's a real opportunity for us. By the way, I'm always interested in understanding who our guests are today. Can I just have a show of hands, including candidates? How many are in our facility for the first time? Wow. That's fantastic. Well, I don't have time to tell you a lot about CFT, but let me just say this. Simply stated, CFT operates as a hub of philanthropy here by connecting individuals, families, and businesses to excellent nonprofit organizations, and then working with them carefully and closely to solve and address community issues. Our North Star is simply to be a foundation for a thriving community, a community that thrives for all, and we've got work to do there. I know we'd all agree. Part of the way we do that is we convene and connect. And this event today is a great example of doing just that. And there's lots of other ways that we do that as well. I don't have the time to share all those with you this morning, but out in the four-way here is our brand new magazine, Impact Magazine. It tells you a lot of the interesting things we're doing in this community and why it matters. So please take a copy when you leave and spend a few moments with it. So simply, I truly appreciate that you're all here today. It says a lot about engagement in the community, and I'm especially appreciative for all the candidates that are spending their time to share their views on why they'll be the next great mayor. So I know you're going to be treated to excellent dialogue, and I hope that you enjoy it a great deal, and please come back sometime. We'd love to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. And I wanted to say, first of all, my name is Carl Falconer. I am the CEO of Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance. And I wanted to say thank you to Dave and the Communities Foundation for hosting this great event today. We do have a couple of candidates that had told us that they will be here, so we're hoping maybe they're just stuck in traffic and on their way. But we want to get started because we know that the candidates have another engagement later, and so we want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to answer as many questions as possible. This morning, what we're going to do is the format is going to be very, very simple. We already have questions for the candidates, and we've lined them up in order by random order of selection. What I'd like to ask the audience to do is to please remain silent regardless of what the responses are that the candidates give you. I know you want to hoop and holler and get up and say yay and all that good stuff. But again, we want to respect their time, and we want to make sure that we get them to their next event on time as well. We did source the questions by sending it out to our community members, our provider agencies, and they sent us back the questions that we're going to read today. We formatted them a little bit to try and give some context, particularly for Dallas, but basically they're the same questions that were sent in to us, and we're just using those for the candidates today. The format, as I said, we have one microphone, and that's so that we can keep people on task and only have one person speak at a time. And what we're going to do is we'll start at this side. I'll read the first, we'll do introductions first, and then I'll do questions, and then they'll have a couple of minutes for a closing statement as well. We'll start on this side, and then we'll move all the way down, and then we'll keep going back and forth again in the order that they were randomly selected. I do have a timekeeper. Where's my timekeeper? Siobhan, are you my timekeeper? Where's Siobhan at? Oh, right in the middle. There she is. Okay, great. And she's got the cards right there. So candidates, if you would, so that we can again stay on task, she's going to be our timekeeper. And when you have 30 seconds left, she will flash the yellow card. And when your time is up, she will flash the red card. So please try and stick to that, and we'll get, like I said, as many questions as we possibly can, and then get you all out of here on time. So first, I'd like to go ahead and open it up to you all to give us just 1 minute introduction. Anything that you'd like to say at this point?
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Allison Kennedy. I'm a candidate for mayor. I'm representing the views of the Socialist Workers' Party. And we believe that there's a fundamental crisis of capitalism. It's a world crisis. There's a world slowdown in trade and production. And it has a deep impact on working people and especially farmers. Many farmers, working farmers, are losing their land. Suicide rates are increasing in the United States among farmers, among veterans, among homeless. These are conditions that we cannot change by just simply implementing a policy by government or passing a law here or there. It's going to take a fundamental change in creating a society that's based on meeting human needs, not based on meeting the needs of the wealthy capitalist class, which protects the profits. The government is there to protect the profits of this class. We need a fundamental change, and we believe we're going to see working people involved in this change in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Good morning. If the others don't show, we'll have to fill in. I feel bad, like you're a little isolated down there.
You can fill in wherever you'd like.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Scott Griggs, and I'm running to be the next mayor of the city of Dallas. I'm a lifelong Dallasite who loves this city, and I've had the privilege and honor of serving on the Dallas City Council for the last 8 years. And that's given me an opportunity to work with people throughout the city of Dallas. And I know that together, there's not a problem we can't solve, a challenge we can't meet, or an opportunity we can't seize. I have more faith than ever in the people of the city of Dallas, and that's why I'm running to be your next mayor. I also recognize that it's time for a change. In Dallas, we've had mayors for far too long that focus solely on the postcard. The fancy bridges, the convention center hotel, the horse park where you've probably never ridden a horse, the golf course you've never played a round of golf. It's time to focus on what really matters in the city of Dallas. It's time to have Dallas, a city that we can all live in, and Dallas, a city that works for all of us. And that's what I intend on doing. And I know our shared values can get us there. Transparency and accountability, safe, strong neighborhoods, and a renewed focus on the basics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being here today, this morning. It's still morning, right? Okay, good. We've already had a couple of these. My name is Miguel Solis. I'm the grandson of immigrants. My grandmother was a refugee, fled the Mexican Revolution. My grandfather came for economic opportunity. And in the early 1900s, they met each other in Port Arthur, Texas. They had 4 kids, my dad included. When my father was 2, my grandfather passed away in a chemical spill. And so my grandmother was left with 4 children, a 4th grade education, speaking nothing but Spanish. But as I reflect back on their experience and the fact that I stand here in front of you today as a former DISD teacher and central administrator, a current Dallas School Board member having been elected since 2013, also serving as president of the Dallas Board, having received a couple of degrees myself, and having shaped the future of this city. That experience for me is only real because at the time of my grandparents, there was an infrastructure of opportunity that existed. A great education, houses that people could afford, public transportation that got them where they needed to go on time, a safe community, and jobs that paid a great wage. That infrastructure of opportunity allowed me to be here with you today. And in Dallas, with the booming economy and the lowest unemployment rate we may have ever had, that infrastructure of opportunity is still not real enough for far too many people. And so I'm running to be your next mayor to rebuild that infrastructure of opportunity. And I hope to talk to you a little bit about that today as it relates to homelessness.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lynn McBee, and I'm running to be the mayor of Dallas. And real quickly, I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was born and raised in Freeport, Texas, a small town on the Gulf Coast. I went to public school. I then went to UT Austin and achieved a degree in biochemistry. And then I went and I was an employee, 74, of a biotech company that's now over 1,000 people. Over 25 years as a young woman, I helped build that biotech. And then 5 years ago, after having a career in biotech, I had the job and the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm now the CEO of an organization called Young Women's Prep Network. We're investors in public education for girls that are underserved and first generation to go to college. Talk about breaking the cycles of poverty. It's by investing in people and getting them an education. I've also, for the last 25 years, been working very hard in Dallas on some of its most critical and challenging issues, like the homeless, like domestic violence, like human trafficking, and a lot of work in public education. I'm a collaborative leader that listens. I'm a team builder. I like being part of a team, and I'm confident leading a team. We need a collaborative leader right now that's going to get things done down at City Hall, and I look forward to our discussion this morning around homelessness and how we can address this very critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hold on to that mic right there.
Okay.
I'm coming to you with the first question. The first question is, myths regarding the homeless abound. There could be many reasons why people become homeless. Research shows that people fall into homelessness when they lack a network of social supports. If elected mayor, what would you do to dispel the myths about homelessness? And you have 2 minutes for a response.
So I've learned in my work with let me start to the very beginning. 15 years ago, I was asked to be on the board for the Salvation Army and first became into the issue of homelessness through my work with the Army and serving down at Carp Collins. Then about 10 years ago, I was asked to get involved with the Bridge. And I've done intake at the Bridge, and it's a very vulnerable population. They're a population that do not have a lot of coping skills. They come in with mental illness, they come with a lot of addictions, they don't have that support structure. One of the things at the Bridge and all of our partner agencies that we're able to do is we're able to wrap people around in services that they need to start to get them back on their feet, to start to address the things that plague them. And it can be as simple as reaching out and finding that loved one that needs to take them back in. If we can get them connected with someone that's in the family right away before they get on the street, then the chances of them ever getting on the street are going to be a lot less. You know, I did the homeless count. I've done it the last few years. And this year, of the folks we counted, I did my own little mental math. And 60% had been incarcerated, and 70% were probably mentally ill. So it's a very difficult population. So the one thing we can do as mayor is we can make sure that there's strong coalitions and that everyone in the continuum of care is working together, no one's siloed, and that we're working together to achieve the best outcome for this very difficult population. The Meadows Mental Health and all the work that's being done to address mental health, the Bridge and all the partner agencies that we work with at night because we can't sleep all the people we see during the day. The continuum of care is not about one agency and it's not about one tactic or strategy. It's about the whole panacea of things that we need to do to address this very difficult population. So I think it's about advocacy and awareness, but I think it's also about everybody uniting behind and being in collaboration on how we go about touching and tackling this very difficult issue. So I think as mayor, to the original question, you would want to make sure that we've got a strong continuum of care, we've got a strong MDHA, we've got everybody at the table, and that we're all are looking at what is the best way to tackle this population. Because we all are doing really great work, but we can't do it in silos. We got to do it collaboratively. We're very lucky to have partners like the City of Dallas and the Office of Homeless Solutions that does help, that is at the table. And we've got so much philanthropy in this area, but we've got to make sure that we're using that philanthropy smart, and we've got to make sure that we're using city resources smart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, if elected mayor, what would you do to dispel the myths about homelessness?
Well, the first thing is I need to recognize what are the powers the mayor has to be able to dispel these myths. Two major powers. Number one, the mayor has a bully pulpit. And in the 9th largest city in the nation, the mayor should be using that bully pulpit to help dispel the myths. And the best way to dispel myths, I found in public service, is to come to the table with facts. The second thing is the shaping of the council agenda and convening power. If homelessness is going to be an issue the city's going to focus on, it's got to manifest itself into actual change within the council agenda. And, as Ms. McBee has already mentioned, we cannot address this issue in silos. We need to have a robust interagency approach. We should focus on partnering with nonprofit organizations, philanthropic organizations, the faith-based community. But the city should be working with the county in a more thoughtful way. The city should be working with DART in a more thoughtful way. And as mayor, it's absolutely essential that we utilize those powers to bring this issue to the table and continue to improve our services to address the existential threat that is homelessness. The other thing is, how does someone become homeless? We've talked about some of the issues, substance abuse. We've talked about things like the jail to homeless pipeline. We haven't talked about things like being an LGBTQ youth. We have 3,000 homeless children attending Dallas ISD schools. who show up to school despite the homelessness to get an education because they know if they get it, it's their best path out of homelessness. So we need a mayor who recognizes these issues, but is going to be willing to be bold and innovative around the way that we approach this issue. The last thing, we live in a segregated city. We still live in a tale of two cities. And the compounding moral debts that we owe to generations of Dallasites is going to have to be reckoned with. And some of the effects that manifest themselves in homelessness are a direct tie to a century's worth of decisions, man-made, rooted in race and racism. And our next mayor has got to be willing to be comfortable and courageous in talking about this and addressing how we knit together two cities into one. And if we can do those things, we'll get to the root causes of what drives homelessness.
Thank you. Again, if elected mayor, what would you do to dispel the myths about homelessness?
As mayor, I'll use the power of the office to talk about homelessness. Anyone can experience homelessness, and we need to recognize that and remove any stigmas about it. And we need to start talking about the solutions and putting them on the agenda. The first step that we did when I was currently on the council was setting up the Office of Homeless Solutions. It has made huge strides. And then we need to look at the programs we have in place. For example, Track 3, because we know what the solution to homelessness is. The solution is finding someone a home and the supportive services. We need to find apartments in the city of Dallas that will accept housing choice vouchers to move people off the streets into houses. Once we do that, people will understand that a person who's homeless once they're in a house is just like anyone else. And we can start addressing these issues. Also, we need to continue our other programs. Track 4, we need to build more facilities to help with homeless. For example, the Salvation Army facility that's coming off of 35 and Regal Road. We need to support that as a council and get that done. If we do these things, we are going to remove people get them off the streets, get them in a safe environment, get them the supportive services they need, and that's going to change what people think of homelessness in the city of Dallas. They're going to see the huge strides the city is making, and that's going to build up more momentum for more progress faster. We've already come so far as the city of Dallas. We recognize how much further we have to go, but we can do it by emphasizing, continuing the plan we have, particularly Tracks 3 and Tracks 4 that deal with source of income discrimination and getting people into units, and then building the additional capacity we need for facilities to get people off the streets. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a cashier at Walmart, and I have coworkers that are homeless. I have coworkers that have no home. They have no apartment. They're living in the kinds of things that the other candidates describe. And I think there is no reason for this. In a society that's as wealthy as the United States, that the companies like Walmart and other corporations make the billions and trillions of dollars in profits that they make, that we produce for them. The workers at Walmart produce these profits. The workers that work for the oil companies produce these profits. So I believe it's a crime. This is the real crime that exists in this country, which is these crimes are increasing. There is more class division, growing class division. The gaps between people who work and the upper middle class and the wealthy class is growing, not decreasing. And it stems from an international global crisis of capitalism. That's why you can't put a Band-Aid on it. And a lot of these Band-Aids are put on it to make people feel better. That, oh yes, we're doing something about these problems. But I believe the only way we're going to solve these problems is when working people begin to fight and struggle for our rights. And I think we're going to see this in the coming years. I believe this is what both the Democratic and Republican parties are afraid of. They're afraid we're going to rebel, because we are. Many of the homeless are right now living in Allen, Texas. There was a raid in Allen, Texas. ICE, local police, raided a factory, arrested 284 workers who are now in detention centers. These are homeless people. This is a crime. These are people that are in the United States to work and make a living. That's why my campaign supports the fight for amnesty, to deal with these questions of the failure of the U.S. government to provide any kind of immigration reform, because they're not going to do it. But these are the conditions that we must discuss.
Thank you. You can hold on to the mic right there. The next question. The consensus of researchers in the field is that the only way to end homelessness is through housing. The problem is, in the words of Councilman Mark Clayton, everyone supports housing for the homeless, just not in their district. What would you do to deal with this and other not in my backyard approaches among the citizenry as well as members of City Council?
Well, I think that it's not just, homelessness is due to a number of things. First of all, a lot of young people are part of what you would describe as the new homeless in the United States because they can't afford to move out of their parents' home. They come out of college, they're saddled with incredible debt from banks that give these incredible loans at very high interest rates. They can't afford to pay these back. They can't find jobs when they get out of college. I have coworkers who came out of college and are working at Walmart because they can't find work in the field they went to school for. So that's a new homeless. The raid that I described earlier, which we're going to see more of, because ICE is investigating I-9 forms of 5,200 companies in the United States. And they did this right before they raided the CV company in Allen. So we can expect more raids. That's why the fight for amnesty is so crucial today. I believe homelessness is caused by low wages, abysmal wages. The wages are stagnant in the United States, yet we see growing profits. So we have to fight for higher wages in this country, which is directly connected to fighting for unions. Most people that work in the United States work in a workplace with no union. I'm for building unions, and I'm for building strong unions, rebuilding the labor movement. And I believe that homelessness is also caused by veterans who return from these unending wars. I just visited Iraq. I was in Iraq for 2 weeks. I saw the devastation that U.S. imperialism has waged on Iraq firsthand, eyewitness report. You can talk to me after the meeting. But veterans return from these wars traumatized, and they are part of the new homeless. 23% of the homeless, the rise in homelessness in Dallas County in 2018 was among veterans. They come back traumatized from these wars. They can't find jobs. They have mental problems.
Thank you.
They're just thrown and treated with scandalous neglect.
Thank you. What would you do to deal with NIMBY issues among citizenry and the City Council?
We need to leverage the comprehensive housing policy to overcome NIMBYism in the city of Dallas. When I arrived to the City Council in 2011, we didn't have a housing policy. I got to be chair in 2015, and I said the city of Dallas is experiencing a housing crisis. And one component of that is homelessness. And so in our comprehensive housing policy, we have something now that's called inclusive zoning. If a developer wants to come, which they always do, downtown, uptown, a dense area, for example, and what do they always want? A little bit more height, a little bit more zoning. In exchange for that extra height, the extra zoning, we're requiring them to set aside units where they have to accept housing choice vouchers, Section 8 vouchers. Then from that, what we have, we call it Track 3. We have a program set up at the City of Dallas where individuals who are experiencing homelessness, we have a fund set aside that will cover, because this won't happen, but landlords worry about this, that homeless individuals are going to damage an apartment or something else is going to go wrong. So there's a fund to cover up those damages that aren't going to happen. And then we have a mobility assistance fund set up also. For these two funds, we have over $1 million. So now an individual experiencing homelessness who has a voucher, we can take them with this program and put them into a unit. That is how we are going to start combating that, because we have these zoning cases happening all over the city of Dallas. And so we are just going to make a policy on the front end that when developers come in and ask for extra density, ask for entitlements, that they will have to accept housing choice vouchers. And by doing that and having our mobility assistance program ready to help individuals experiencing homeless with the paperwork, with the money it takes to move, with the down payment to get into the apartment, we can move them into apartments. And then we're positioned to provide the permanent supportive services. With that system that we've set up, we can actually help homelessness throughout the city of Dallas, and it's not going to impact any one neighborhood. No single neighborhood is going to feel like they're getting isolated or picked on, and it's going to work, and it's going to change people's conception. We were told at the Housing Committee, I don't know if this is true, but if every apartment complex just took 4 vouchers, we would end the problem in the city of Dallas.
Thank you. What would you do to combat NIMBY approaches?
Well, I'll tell you, serving on the Dallas School Board and basically a carbon copy government of City Hall, we have our own NIMBYism issues ourselves. And what I've realized is the only way to tackle NIMBYism is to be bold and to go head at it. Now, in a 14-1 system where you've got single-member districts and you have sort of a gentleman's rule at City Hall or gentlewoman's rule at City Hall that each council member gets to dictate what happens in their district, that can be very difficult. And we have to really think about whether that type of an agreement has actually helped our city when it comes to issues like homelessness. So that's an issue and a conversation that we need to have as a council moving forward. Second, housing first is a very solid approach. We recognize, though, and I'm sure many of the professionals in this room that deal with this know, it's not the only solution. But if it is going to be a solution, then let's put the full weight of city government behind this. And we can't solve it alone in government. We have to have critical public-private partnerships. I think about Hickory Crossings, what Larry James has been doing at City Square, taking some of our, literally some of the most, the homeless that are the most expensive, comprehensive, homeless right now could potentially cost us, with taxpayer dollars, $30,000 to $50,000 a year to serve a single person. But if we can get them a home, like they're doing in Denver, like they're doing in Utah, and like Larry's beginning to do with City Square, we can cut that number in half. And if we layer on top of that social impact bonds, that could potentially help us solve this problem to scale. On the issues of vouchers and Section 8 voucher discrimination, voucher discrimination is very real, and it's legal in the state of Texas right now. We need to work to try to resolve that issue. But even if we could get vouchers in this city, I've talked to the Apartment Association, and right now one of the biggest problems they've got is working with DHA, working with HUD, because of how long that process takes. So as mayor, we've got to work with DHA as well to start to get that system working more effectively. And if we can do these things, then we can tackle a housing first approach, but actually make it realistic and tackle NIMBYism head on.
Thank you. What would you do to combat NIMBY approaches?
So we simply need more permanent supportive housing. We know that if we had permanent supportive housing and we could move people that have worked in all of our different shelters that we're taking care of into a permanent supportive living environment where you're putting them in a home, you're putting them in an apartment, and you're adding wraparound services. We've got so many great nonprofits that are doing work that could be operators of these apartment complexes. We've got a lot of apartments all around town that are dilapidated, that for just some thousands of dollars, wouldn't break the bank, we could turn them into permanent supportive living complexes. So I would say we need to look at, we wouldn't have to go back and rezone because we've already got it zoned, and then you would find operators, very talented nonprofits to go and operate these different places and once we get these folks that are ready to go into permanent supportive living environments, we could bring more people in off the street and start to rehabilitate more folks. You know, I've been looking at how other cities address and work with NIMBYism. And Houston has an organization called New Hope Housing that I want to share with everyone. Some people are probably, I know, familiar with it. Started as a day resource center, but now they're a housing development corporation, and they're brilliant in how they do some of their developments. They do multi-income, multi-family housing next to where people can get jobs and to where transportation is not a factor. And one of the best properties is a property on Congress, downtown Houston. It's multi-income, so you've got someone that's got a voucher that's the low-wage earner. They walk across the street to Minute Maid Park because it's right across from Minute Maid Park. There's no transportation issue because they're just walking 2 blocks. It's oriented next to Houston Community College, so if they want to go to night school, they've got supportive services on like Tuesdays and Thursdays, group treatment and case management, and then you've got 2 other income levels. So I think the way we're going to address NIMBYism is we're going to have to do some creative things like multi-income, multifamily. They're doing it beautifully down in Houston. I know we can do it here in Dallas. And then also refurbishing apartments all over town that don't need a lot of money that could be operated by this great group of nonprofits that we have that are working to tackle this issue in Dallas.
Thank you. Next question. Speaking of Houston, Houston cut their homeless numbers in half. Most observers agree that without former Mayor Anise Parker not only taking a strong leadership role in this area, but rallying all Houston service providers and funders to work together, this would not have happened. What concrete steps would you take to ensure that all Dallas service providers and funders are working together? Start with you.
So I just talked about the work, and that work came from Anise Parker. Anise Parker, when she was mayor, and they have a strong mayor form of government, and she said, enough, no more with this, and we're going to go about tackling this. And so she worked with all the providers in the continuum of care, and they went about figuring out how they were going to tackle it. And one of the things was homelessness, and was housing. And so New Hope was one of the models I know that she worked with them on. And so they've got a campus much like the Army's going to do out on 35. And so they've tackled it across the city. But I think the first thing you've got to do is you've got to have a strong MDHA with a strong continuum of care. You've got to have everybody that's a provider at the table making decisions, because everybody has got so much expertise in all of these nonprofits and the Office of Homeless Solutions. So I think as mayor, you collaborate. You bring everybody to the table. You make sure that all the MDHA and the continuum of care has everybody that's working in every single issue with, you've got the mental health, you've got workforce solutions, you've got all the different operators. I can sit here and I can look out. We've got Salvation Army. I see Larry James. I see Paige Flink. I mean, I see Dr. Woody. I mean, Austin Street. We've got our calling. Everybody here that's working in this space, having them at the table, figuring out what their challenges are collectively, and then addressing how you're going to move it forward. It's you know, we have had a lot of plans. We had, I think McKinsey did a plan for us, and there was a Homeless Solutions Task Force. So we've got plans and plans. And so we need a mayor that's going to effectuate plans, but we need a mayor that's going to look and say, we've got to all collaborate. We've got to have a strong continuum of care. We've got to have everybody at the table with MDHA and just make it a priority. And that's what they did in Houston. And, you know, we can do it here in Dallas, but it's strong leadership.
Great, thank you. What concrete steps would you take to ensure that all Dallas service providers and funders work together?
We need to continue to support the organizations that have been doing this work. We don't have to recreate the wheel. But the difference between what Anise Parker was able to do and the difference between what we've been able to do in Dallas, or what we're still trying to do, starts with the form of government. The fact that Anise Parker could shepherd all of her government behind her and a strong mayor form of government was just absolutely critical. So we face a jurisdictional challenge right now when it comes to the way that our government's set up. But it's not insurmountable. We have to have better interjurisdictional and interagency work to then support the work that you all do. Here's one primary example of what we could potentially do. An Office of Reentry. This is just one element of homelessness. But when people leave prison and they come out on the streets, it is exponentially harder for them to find a home. They can't find the home because they can't afford the home. They can't afford the home because they can't get a job. They can't get a job because of the stigma that comes with just having left jail. So if we had an interagency partnership between the city, between the county, the DA's office, and others, and begin to align a set of goals and shared metrics behind things like reentry, we could be a better supporter of the work that you do. And if you think that this is too bold an idea, that it never manifests itself, well, let me tell you, the city is already beginning to do this with something called the Child Poverty Action Lab, which manifests itself from the Mayor's Poverty Task Force, again led by Larry James and then later Regina Montoya. And what this program is doing is it is bringing all those agencies we know should be dealing with the issue, the city, the county, DART, Parkland, and so on and so forth. And it's brought them to the table, established a set of shared goals and a set of shared metrics, and for the first time, all of these institutions are working towards resolving the massive child poverty issue that we've got in this city. Why can we not do this for homelessness as well? I say we can, and I say we're going to. And if we can do this from an interjurisdictional standpoint, we will better serve you in the work that you do every day.
Thank you. Again, what concrete steps would you take to ensure that all Dallas service providers and funders work together?
We can ensure all Dallas service providers and funders work together by setting the right committee structure at City Hall and convening. One of the big powers that the mayor has at the City of Dallas is not only setting the agenda, but setting the committee structure. We need a committee structure that prioritizes these relationships. If you think about the City Council hears every other Wednesday well over 100 items, and they spend maybe 6 hours on them. Those items come up from committees. Maybe a committee meets twice a month. They spend 3 hours on 20 of those items. And beneath that, we need to continue the Homeless Commission. And the Homeless Commission needs to convene regularly with the service providers and the funders to making sure they're all working together. We need an entire committee on this that meets monthly. That's how we give it the attention at City Hall. If you look at other things that are important to the city of Dallas, because this is all about priorities, look at economic development. You got TIF committees, you got housing finance committees, all types of subcommittees that then go up to the economic development committee that then go up to the council. We need to have the same approach on homelessness. That's why I support continuing the Homeless Commission to deal with these issues once a month, twice a month, convening the providers, convening the funders, making sure the city is being a good partner and finding out that everyone is working together. Then that information flows up to the Housing Committee, which flows up to the council, which keeps the entire thing moving. We prioritize this by giving it the attention. At the City of Dallas, you give something attention by having committees and having it discussed regularly and putting strong leaders on these committees. And that's what I intend on doing. Continuing the Homeless Commission, having this Homeless Commission convene with the providers and the funders regularly, finding out what we need as a city and finding out that everything is moving forward. That's how we'll give it the attention and keep everything moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, what concrete steps would you take to ensure Dallas service providers and funders work together?
You know, I get asked similar questions a lot. You know, what would I do when elected mayor of Dallas? And what I explain is not what I would do. It's what we as working people are going to do together to begin to get into our bones that there is no solutions to the problems, the deep problems that we face in this society by depending on the policies of the Democratic and Republican parties. You know, when you talk about homelessness, you've got to go back to the Clinton administration, which this book is about, the Clintons' anti-working class record. It's about what happened in the 2016 election, which was earth-shaking in this country. It showed how unstable the Democratic and Republican parties are, but it also explains the policies that were implemented beginning with William Clinton that destroyed programs like aid to families with dependent children, that increased the 3 strikes and you're out, which is the reason why we have the high incarceration rate in the United States, which deeply affects Afro-American workers. These are the policies that were implemented by his administration, working hand in glove with Newt Gingrich, a Republican, that's been carried out by every administration since. There's been no difference, whether it's Bush, Obama, or Trump. They all represent the wealthy class. They might have tactical difference on what they do, whether it's tariffs or not tariffs, but their fundamental goal is the same, to make sure that the capitalists, the upper middle class, make their money and live comfortably, while the rest of the population is struggling, is working, is barely surviving, is working from paycheck to paycheck, which is a reason why we have homelessness. And it's going to grow. There's no fundamental thing that's going to change it. All the programs that my opponents have described, yeah, it might provide an apartment for someone for a while, but are they going to have a job that pays decently so they can make it in life? No. These are fundamental problems, and it's going to take a fundamental change, and that's what my campaign is all about.
Thank you. Next question. Councilwoman Sandy Grayson said this about Dallas's last anti-panhandling campaign. We put a lot of money into this. We're up to more than $400,000. The results today are 21 people who've agreed to try and work with us and try to change the panhandling life that they've been living. I don't think that's adequate results for the kind of money we're spending. If elected mayor, what would you do about panhandling in Dallas? We'll start with you, Ms. Kennedy.
Well, you know, to me, that's turning the victim into the criminal, which is symptomatic of this society. You know, it's what Malcolm X talked about when he talked about that racism is caused by this system of exploitation. Well, the problems that working people face are caused by the symptoms of exploitation. And they always want to turn us into the criminals. But we are the victims of this system. But we have to realize we can change these things. that we are capable of constructing a new kind of society. Is this possible? I believe it is. If you look at the historic changes that have happened in the United States, I think the most recent examples are the massive social movement that took place in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s that eliminated the setup of legalized Jim Crow segregation. It took a movement of courageous people, black workers, who stood up for something they believed in. And I believe we're going to see these developments again in this society. I think that there's a tradition of struggle in the United States. There's a tradition of democratic rights in the United States, which is also on the chopping block. But I believe it's possible to change these conditions. For more information, I mentioned this book, The Clintons' Anti-Working Class Record. It's published by Pathfinder Press. And I encourage you to go to www.pathfinderpress.com to check out this book and many others that Pathfinder publishes, which helps working people see what we're capable of doing to change the conditions that affect all of us very deeply.
Thank you. Again, the question, if elected mayor, what would you do about panhandling in Dallas?
I do not believe that we should over-criminalize panhandling. That's been a huge mistake in the city of Dallas. And also, I think this program's had a lot of success. It was a pilot. We have to be able to try innovative approaches. And we got 21 people for spending a few $100,000 and we changed their lives and got them off the streets and got them in a program. That is a good first step and a positive result. I think we need to stick with these programs like the panhandling program and improve them and find them ways. These innovative programs that we have, they're not going to work perfectly the first time. And we cannot be scared to try new things. So this program, I'm a supporter of it. I think we need to double down, find out what best practices are, and continue to improve the program and help more people get off the streets. That's the solution, not running away from it, because the other approaches aren't working. Just writing tickets and putting people in jail, that is so expensive. Having people go to Parkland, that is so expensive. What is the long-term solution to homelessness? Is getting someone a home and getting them off the streets and the necessary permanent supportive services and eventually a job and getting them back fully integrated into society. We can do that with programs like this. So I remain supportive of the program and think it was an excellent first step. I want to continue to try the program, increase the results. Maybe next time we'll get 42 people off the streets. We try the program again. We learn what worked and didn't. We will get 80 people off, then 160, and the program will continue to work. I'm proud of the first step that this program has made and look forward to continuing it. Thank you.
Thank you. If elected mayor, what would you do about panhandling in Dallas?
I want to keep with the sentiment of the criminalization of homelessness. I mean, we got to the point at one point in this council where there were council members espousing from the dais that we needed to simply break the spirit of homeless and they would go away. I mean, that we were at a point in this city where that's what our leaders were saying. And we have got to break that spirit and recognize the value of working with humans and in restoring their dignity along the way. Panhandling is an issue that it happens in large urban cores all across the nation. A good friend of mine is Michael Hancock, the mayor of Denver. They are dealing with panhandling consistently. And it seems like when you feel like you've got a path to solving it, it sprouts up somewhere else, as if you're playing whack-a-mole. And so I think at the end of the day, if we're going to spend almost $1 million or $500,000 to do a PR campaign and hope that we're going to solve panhandling, that's fool's gold. We need to recognize that that money can better be spent aligning the services, aligning the work, especially in a creative interjurisdictional partnership created by an interlocal agreement where our actual government entities that are tasked with having to solve this issue have the resources they need to be able to align their efforts to get to the root cause of why someone panhandles in the first place. And if we do that and use those monies that way, then we could only bolster the work that you all have been doing in this room for many years on the issue. I'm not opposed to new ideas, but at the end of the day, a PR campaign, I think, is not the best approach. It's not comprehensive enough, and those monies could be allocated in a more efficient and effective way. Lastly, Panhandling, I don't believe, is going anywhere anytime soon, because one of the biggest elements of panhandling are people that migrate to the city for a short time and then leave. That is an issue that we face. And so if we're spending money to try to solve a problem for people that aren't even going to be here because they're on to the next stop, that is an issue as well. And so we've got to recognize the long-term outcomes to some of these dollars.
Thank you. Well, if elected mayor, what would you do about panhandling in Dallas?
So the hardest thing to do is to pull up to a light, and you're first at the light, and there's someone that's standing there needing something, and it's the hardest thing to deflect your eyes and to look away. But I know it's the right thing to do from being a volunteer in the homeless space. So I think we've got to look at, I'll give you an example. We tried something at the bridge years ago. It was probably 8 years ago. We had something called bridge kits. And so if you pulled up to a light, we had this kit, and it had shampoo and soap and a comb and a card, that said, come see us at the bridge, because we were trying to invite people in. I don't know how many were redeemed. I would imagine it was not 21. I would imagine it was probably 5 or 6. But I think we've got to look to our providers for creative solutions and how we work with the people that are on the streets. We can't penalize them. I mean, they're not. It's a group that has no coping skills. It's a very fragile population. But I think we've got to look at our providers and what are practices that they could help instill in this challenge. One of the other things too is I think about the issue of feeding, which you haven't brought up. And everybody wants to feed the homeless, which is a nice thing to do, but we have people that literally go and take food down to where the homeless are hanging out on the streets. What ends up happening is they have a good meal, and then it becomes street trash, which goes back to basics, because code enforcement right now is dealing with things like Shingle Mountain, if y'all have been following that, which was an atrocity. So they don't have time to do coding for things that are like trash. So the best intentions can turn into problems. So I think we have to lean on our providers to help us find solutions to panhandling, solutions to educating the masses about feeding and some of these things, because they're well-intentioned, but the consequences aren't good at the end. So, I would lean on the providers to help us solve that problem.
Thank you. This will be the final question. Former Vice President Joe Biden quotes his father as saying, "Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what your priorities are." The Dallas Observer recently reported that the city of Dallas spends more on the Dallas Zoo than on homelessness. How would you prioritize homeless solutions in the city budget?
So our budget that we're about to approve is $3.7 billion. It's gone up, I think, 40% in the last 8 years, and it is all about prioritization. We know right now we have a police force that's down 30%. So that's obviously, we've got to be a safe city. So that's got to be a priority, because we need the police that are going to be out helping us in the homeless space. It's about code enforcement, which is a basic infrastructure, making sure we've got smooth streets, and then we've got code enforcement so that when we do have the feeding go on, or we do have the trash mountain. So they're the basic things, public safety and infrastructure type things. And then you get into the social service arena of making homelessness a priority, making sure that we're putting the adequate resources there. Right now, private philanthropy is funding a lot of what's going on in this challenge. And the public piece and the priority that it has in the budget is not large enough. Private philanthropy cannot sustain, nor should it take care of our housing, our homeless problem. So we've got to make it a bigger priority. We've got to cut out more in the budget to address this. Increasing public safety is going to help, because we'll have more officers and they can help. Having better basics and the infrastructure and code enforcement is going to help, but we've got to make this a priority. It's got to be up there at the top. We're very lucky that we've got a very generous city, and we've got a lot of people that are volunteering their time and their resources to take care of this, but it's got to take up more space in the budget. It's got to be a bigger priority. It would be a bigger priority under my leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. How would you prioritize homeless solutions in the city budget?
When I talk about the infrastructure of opportunity, I've mentioned 5 major elements: education, housing, transportation, public safety, and then workforce readiness, jobs that pay a fair wage. Many of those elements right now in the budget need some priority shifting. 65% of our budget right now, my understanding, is going to public safety. And I would make the case that I think that it probably needs to stay there, if not go up a little bit more. But if I've balanced a $1.5 billion budget at DISD, for everything you spend up on, you got to go spend down on something else. So as a city, we are going to have a conversation about whether or not we are going to shift this budget, and we can get started on that On day one with my administration, I'll appoint a Citizens Budget Review Commission, and we'll take a couple of priorities that I've begun to hear across this city during this campaign. Homelessness is one, public safety is another. And we'll review that budget, scrub that budget, and then have a conversation with this city about whether we want to prioritize other things. Second, we will not solve this alone again through the city's budget. What have we done at DISD to try to work with homelessness? Well, we created a very innovative public partnership with City Square, Social Venture Partners, After 8 to Educate. We took a facility that was a school that was closed, flipped it, and now there are going to be 60 to 70 homeless youth that are going to be there getting holistic services and then allowing them the opportunity to continue their education in a safe spot. We need to be thoughtful about building partnerships with other entities who have their own budgets that can help us solve this. And lastly, we've got to think bold when it comes to long-term revenue. There is conversation that's begun in the journalistic circles about the idea of potentially going after a private contract with Love Field or a private contract with DFW Airport. And the conservative estimates on doing something like that, though not easy, could potentially be $5.3 to $5.8 billion of injected revenue. That's a bold idea. As mayor, I at least want to study it. And so I'll apply for a federal grant to the tune of $750,000 that would allow us the opportunity to look at what this might mean to the future of our city and how we might solve some of these existential crises with an injection of an exponential growth of capital.
Thank you. How would you prioritize homeless solutions in the city budget?
The budget is a reflection of our values. Wherever you've seen the budget, that's our values. And what has the city of Dallas been doing? We spent $115 million on a second Calatrava bridge that needs $7 million before it can open. We built a golf course that was $30 million that you've never played golf at. Horse park, $15 million. We tried to build a whitewater rapid in the middle of the Trinity to make us look like Colorado. That cost us $4 million to put in and $2 million to rip out. Costco wanted to build a place off Central Expressway. Has anyone been to that Costco? You probably can't get a parking spot. It's doing so well. We wrote them a $3 million check. They didn't need our money. ESPN wanted to come here and put on a football game the day after Christmas that no one would watch. They couldn't get the advertising revenue, so they said, City of Dallas, will you float us? Unfortunately, I got outvoted and the council said yes and wrote them a check for $300,000. We need to stop the boondoggles and the economic development giveaways and the corporate welfare and focus on the city of Dallas and making it livable. That's why we don't have sufficient money to fix our streets. That's why we don't have the money for our police. That's why we don't have the money to invest in homelessness. That's why we don't have the money for the libraries that we need, is because around here in the city of Dallas, we are focused on building boondoggles to have a postcard, and we're focused on corporate welfare. That needs to end. We've got a huge budget. The general fund is $1.3 billion. $1.3 billion. And every year, we set up economic development slush funds. One's called from Dallas Water Utilities, a pilot fund. We put over $20 million in that economic development slush fund. That stuff needs to end. We are at a crisis with our streets. We are at a crisis with homelessness. We are at a crisis with public safety. We have libraries that have been neglected for too long. We have recreation centers that have been neglected for too long. The people of the city of Dallas have been neglected for too long. Let's reprioritize. And when we do that, we're going to have all the money that we need. We're going to have money for additional money for homelessness, for our streets, for our parks, in our rec centers. This next election is about our priorities. What kind of city do we want to live in? Do we want to live in one that looks beautiful on the postcard? Or do we want to live one that everyone can live in, that takes care of everyone, including the homelessness?
Thank you.
Thank you.
How would you prioritize homeless solutions in the city budget?
Well, I don't think that's the answer to homeless, just by increasing the dollar figures in line item things in the city budget. That's not the homelessness is from the crisis of the capitalist system, which is a deep crisis. Think about the collapse of the economy in 2008. Do we really think that the things that caused that crisis have stopped? No. They're building up the same credit bubbles they built up in 2008. Look at the housing in Dallas, the high rents, the high cost of buying a house. The average cost of a house in Dallas is about $300,000. Who can afford this on the wages that you make in this society? The wages are stagnant in this country. Most people work part-time jobs. I think there's two big obstacles that working people face in our ability to realize that we can change things. First is just realizing that we are capable, that we are worth something, because this is beat out of us in all institutions in society. Another book that Pathfinder has published, which I encourage everyone to take a look at, is Are They Rich Because They're Smart? Are they rich because they're smart? No, they're not rich because they're smart. They're rich because of working people who produce the commodities that they sell to make profit. And we have to realize this. We have to realize, as the back cover says, the sharpening class inequalities in the United States and the resulting conflicts accelerated by today's slow-burning world depression. This is what this book explains. It takes apart the self-serving rationalizations of a growing layer of well-paid professionals that their schooling and brightness equip them to regulate the lives of working people. We have a lot of that in this society. Do-gooders that think they can tell us what to do, that think that they can pass a few laws that change our conditions. Well, I'm here to tell you the Socialist Workers' Party is running in this election to be a voice for working people, that we can change things. And that is the only thing that is going to change things in this country.
Thank you. Finally, I'd like to give all of the candidates one last opportunity to have a closing statement. We have a little extra time, so I'll give you 2 minutes each for your closing statement. So right here.
Well, another publication that I would encourage people to take a look at is the Militant newspaper. You can access this online at www.themilitant.com. The Socialist Workers' Party is running 17 candidates in 11 states on a slate in the United States to present these ideas to working people. And we're doing this because there's a fundamental crisis in not just the United States, but in the world. I mentioned that I just returned from Iraq, where I was invited to participate in a workshop in Kurdistan, Iraq, which is in the northern region of the country. The workshop was on women's equality. And this was organized by young Iraqi Kurdish women who are very concerned about this problem of women's equality. But you know, they're also concerned about what they are living in, with the fact that the United States, Russia, Iran, all these countries are competing with who controls Iraq and the devastation this is bringing on their lives. But this is, you know, what we face in Dallas. You can't just look at it, this is Dallas, and we're going to solve these problems in Dallas, and we're only going to think about Dallas. You have to look at the world. These problems that we're discussing here are world problems, and they require working people in all of our countries, working people in alliance with working farmers and other exploited layers in society, uniting and beginning to figure out that we can solve these problems. You know, I think we're going to see bigger struggles by working people in the coming years. I think we're going to see a growing fight for amnesty in this country, which is not an unheard of thing. Reagan, when he was president, passed an amnesty. I have met workers door to door campaigning that told me that's how they got their papers, was through Reagan's amnesty. So it's not an unheard of thing. But this would be immigration reform to win amnesty, but it's going to take a fight to do it. Just as organizing unions, just on fighting for higher wages that you can live on. But it's going to take struggle. And as we begin to struggle for our rights and flex our muscles, we're going to gain confidence. And we're going to gain the kind of confidence that's going to create a movement in the society that working people can take political power and reorganize the society to meet the needs of the majority.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me out this morning. As I said, my name is Scott Griggs. I'm running to be mayor of the city of Dallas. I've been on the Dallas City Council for 8 years as a leader. In my experience, I'm ready to go to work on day one. We touched a little bit on the issues that are important to us. I'll talk about homelessness, summarize. We need to continue our work on what we call Track 1, our relationship with MDHA and the Bridge that the Office of Homeless Solutions put out. We need to continue our work to create more units that people experiencing homelessness can move into. That is so important. We need to fund that program more. It's barely funded over $1 million now. We need to add, that's called track 3, add more funding to that program so we have units with individuals who are experiencing homelessness that have a voucher can move into a place. Then we can start providing those permanent supportive services that are needed. Also, we need to expand the number of homeless facilities we have in the city of Dallas. And we have a huge opportunity coming up with the Salvation Army off of I-35. That's a $95 million facility. We all know with the capacity we have with the bridge, the other places near downtown, off of Harry Hines, the existing Salvation Army, we don't have enough capacity. So this is a great opportunity coming up. There's probably no way that we're going to get a $95 million gift anytime soon. So I absolutely support that project. And what we need to do is reprioritize. As I said a few minutes ago, for far too long, we've been a city that is solely focused on becoming the postcard. And we're there. We got not one, but 2 bridges. We got the Convention Center Hotel and the other things I talked about. Let's stop funding those projects and building new projects like that. And it's time to put the money into our streets, into our parks, into our rec centers, into programs to address homelessness. That's what needs to happen. And we can really change this city. That's why this election is so pivotal and so important, is which direction are we going to go? We've built all the beautiful things, and now it is time to get back to the basics and deal with the problems that we have in the city of Dallas, and we can do it. Please visit griggsfordallas.com to learn more. I know we couldn't hand out literature, but if you go to another forum, we do about, I think we did 9 of these last week. So if you happen to go to another forum and pick up my literature, I put my cell phone number out there. I would love to talk to you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being able to be here today, the thoughtful questions that were submitted, and great moderation today as well. We appreciate it. Thank you, Community Foundations of Texas. Homelessness is an entrenched issue in this city, and it's going to take bold leadership, the support of many of you in this room, and a new approach focused on building government partnerships that can support the work that you all do. We need to keep the Homeless Commission going because we can't let this fall to the wayside. We need to ensure that we tackle issues around vouchers, the expansion of affordable housing stock in our city. We can do it by building on the comprehensive housing policy, getting our transportation system working better so that people can get to jobs that will then get them the wages they need to afford that home. Be innovative around things like an Office of Reentry, so that way people that leave prison have access to jobs and a home, and many other things. But on top of that, if we don't get to the root cause of some of these issues, by building an infrastructure of opportunity for our people, we'll never completely solve it. Let's push to universal pre-K in this city so that all 3- and 4-year-olds have a high-quality start. Because if they get a great start and get a great education, their chances of success and never ending up in homelessness is that much better. We need to have that comprehensive housing policy actually built out. The first of its kind comprehensive transportation plan in this city, which actually puts the interests of our citizens first. A public safety unit, a public safety force that can take care of our community, police our community, but build trust in our community as well. And jobs that pay a great wage in a 21st century economy. As your mayor, I want to rebuild that infrastructure of opportunity so that we get to the root cause of what drives homelessness to begin with. And if you think it's too crazy, listen, it may sound crazy, but we can get it done. The great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why he wanted to climb it. You know what he said? Because it's there. Solving homelessness is there. But we have to be willing to have the fortitude, the grit, the determination, and the vision to get the job done. My name is Miguel Solis, and I want to be that mayor that leads with you so that we solve these issues. I hope to count on your support come May 4th. Early voting begins on April 22nd. And to learn more about our ideas, you can go to miguelformayor.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Lynn McBee. It's been an honor to be with you this morning. I see so many people that I worked alongside to combat homelessness. I started out by telling you I grew up in a small town of 11,000 people. And I tell you that because in a small town, you take care of your neighbor. You make sure that if your neighbor's hungry, you're taking them food. If they need a coat because they're cold, you're doing a coat drive. You take care of your neighbor because you do it because you want everybody to have the best quality of life possible. I will tell you, we are not taking care of our neighbors here. We are not taking care of the homeless here. You know, I look at Anise Parker, and she was in a great situation, strong mayor system, she in her first term, and she saw that, you know, they have this big problem. I know here with this form of government, with my leadership and the talent that we have, the nonprofit providers, the Office of Homeless Solutions, and prioritizing the budget, that we can tackle it. We're never going to end homelessness. But what we've got to do is we've got to figure out how we all coexist together. We've got to find the best possible solution for our people that are in these horrible situations. We've got to figure out how we get them up and back on their feet, how we put them in a permanent supportive living environment, how we bring more people off the street to have those types of home situations. So we've got to take it from a very grassroots. You love your neighbor, you're going to do what's right by your neighbor. You're going to make it a priority in the budget. We've already talked about needing public safety. That's got to be number one priority, because if we're not a safe city, then where do you go from there? And then it's the basics. It's the infrastructure. It's the roads. It's the code compliance. It's things like that. But then number three, we need to think about bumping up what the public piece is in the homeless space. The private, nonprofit sector is carrying too much of a burden right now, and it's not sustainable. We cannot expect the private sector to continue to take care of our homeless. We've got to have more carved out of the budget. We've got track 3 for homes. We've got track 4. We've got all of these great things. We've got all the great plans. But we need a mayor who can be collaborative and bring people together and get things done. I've been doing that for 25 years. I've been parts of teams, I've been on teams, and I've led teams. All different stakeholder groups aligning behind a vision and a goal and getting things done. The election's May 4th, April 22nd's early voting. My website's lynnmcbee.com. Please check it out. I'd be honored to have your vote. It was great to be here with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody showing up. I really appreciate this. And let's go ahead and give the candidates one more hand. Thank you all. Have a great day.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.